compliments of the season, and welcome to the Gavel. Today, we're going on a journey through the year 2018 in the National Assembly. We'll look at the major activities, the dramas, the events that got Nigerians glued to the television sets and trended on social media. Now let's jump right in.
In 2018, the National Assembly gave us drama, nail-biting tension, lots and lots to talk about. One of the most remarkable incidents was the barricade of the National Assembly by security operatives.
This is not about APC, this is not about PDP. This is Nigeria versus Muhammadu Buhari. Enough of this running from the actual police. People are being assassinated every day. Police cannot do anything.
News filtered in early in the morning of August 7 that security operatives from the Department of State Services had barricaded the National Assembly, preventing staff, lawmakers, as well as journalists from accessing the assembly. Hours later, the lawmakers were eventually allowed access. Tensions had been brewing weeks to this point after some legislators from the ruling All Progressives Congress, led by Senate President Bukola Saraki, defected to the opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP. The ruling APC condemned the defections and called for the removal of the Senate President. The blockade of the National Assembly, coming amidst APC's calls for the removal of the Senate President, was condemned and led to the immediate sack of the DSS boss, Lawal Daura.
I don't know. The security should be guarding us, but not preventing us from entering here. You know?
Are they plot to impeach the Senate President?
What happened the last week, I have already said that. So whether anybody wants to succeed in this issue, I'll leave that to God.
We are supposed to meet here today, the leadership of the National Assembly. The meeting was called by the Senate President to come and meet here by 12 o'clock today. And that was why I drove in, literally for that meeting.
So has the meeting been held now?
No, the meeting is being called off because I didn't even know that there were other issues until I got here about 11:45.
The day after, the Senate President accused the APC of plotting his removal.
The siege was also an act of cowardice by those seeking to carry out an illegal impeachment of leaders of the Senate in flagrant disregard of the law.
The blockade was the boiling point after the defections of legislators, notably the Senate President, and eventually the Speaker of the House of Representatives, creating a situation where for the first time in the history of the country, the leadership of the National Assembly fell into the hands of the opposition. But nothing was quite as shocking and daring as the snatching of the Senate's mace in the full glare of Nigerians. On April 17, unmasked men accompanied embattled lawmaker Senator Ovi Omwagige into the Senate's chamber and forcefully extracted the mace in the full glare of lawmakers. The Senate had earlier suspended Senator Omwagige over remarks he made insinuating that the amendment of the 2010 Electoral Act, which sets a sequence for general elections, is targeted at President Muhammadu Buhari. Following the theft of the mace, the police picked him up on the day of the incident, and the National Assembly launched an investigation into the matter. The relationship between the National Assembly and the executive has rarely been smooth sailing, but things got out of hand in 2018. President Muhammadu Buhari has so far rejected over 20 bills sent to him for assent, including the much-anticipated Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, which had been passed after years of failed attempts, and the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which President Muhammadu Buhari rejected 4 times.
I think the president cited, from the communications that was made public, cited 2 planks of reasons. One is that the Electoral Act Amendment is coming too close to the elections. And 2, he again went back to the whole issue of typographical or thinking errors that he identified. Those are 2 reasons he has given. Taking what I think is the less important reason, which is what he calls the errors. I think always when there are errors in laws, these errors are sorted out if there is legal disputation in the courts, or can be sorted out subsequently by an amendment that is made. Now, everyone is looking towards the 2019 elections because we want to see a well-conducted election. The process of arriving at this fourth version of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill involved officials of the presidency, the National Assembly, and the Independent National Electoral Commission. When the president rejected the amendment for the third time, there was a convening of all of these actors to look at what the issues were. And I would concede that in rejecting the third amendment, the president pointed out valid reasons. And I think that when the three stakeholders, the executive, the legislature, and INEC, did sit down to look at it, it was agreed what it was. And it was back and forth between the National Assembly, INEC, and the presidency to say, the National Assembly asking, are you satisfied with what we have now? And I can say that because I knew about these discussions. When this was asked, the final answers that came back was, yes, now you have addressed the issues. It was on that basis that the National Assembly sent this to the president for his assent on November 7th. Now, coming back to point out what I would consider inconsequential errors that can be corrected either by proposing amendments, and I have no doubt that the National Assembly would have very easily amended those little errors that the president identified. Not doing that raised serious questions. Now, going to the second reason, which was actually his first reason, that it is coming too close, and there have been citations of the ECOWAS Protocol on Elections and Good Governance that says you should not allow or it is not advisable to have amendments to the electoral legal framework less than 6 months to an elections. Now, this protocol, I think we have to put this protocol in the context of why it was made. And it was made in 2010. This protocol arose from the history of coups in West Africa and the dictators in West Africa, and indeed in the continent, who, in order to perpetuate their rule in office, would change the laws a few months to the elections in order to give themselves advantage to the disadvantage of the opposition. Coming back to Nigeria and coming from the rationale for ECOWAS proposing this protocol, it is quite clear that there is nothing in the electoral legal framework or the amendments that were being proposed that was too substantial. Now, don't forget that the National Assembly, which passed this law, is made up of several parties, the ruling party, the opposition party. And there was nothing within the National Assembly that indicated a major controversy. Now, the two issues that have been raised by the two major parties have been the issue of the smart card reader and the electronic transmission. If we look at that, the presidency was even accusing the National Assembly of sending the bill to them in the third amendment that was proposed, that the president rejected, without including the smart card readers, and indicating by inference that the presidency was satisfied and indeed happy with the use of the smart card readers and its entrenchment in the law. So when we look at that, it is quite clear to me that there was nothing, or there is nothing in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill that is proposed by the National Assembly which the president refused assent to. There is nothing there that is controversial. So I'm puzzled, and I think it's very ill-advised for the president to have refused assent to the bill. I don't know who advised him, and I don't know why he was advised, but quite frankly, I do not understand the rationale for refusing assent, because there is nothing in the bill that creates advantage for anybody, for any of the political parties.
It is instructive to note that the National Assembly has also made no attempt to overturn the president's veto on any of these bills.
Between the executive and the legislature.
In 2018, the National Assembly also held a joint session and threatened to evoke their constitutional powers against President Muhammadu Buhari over alleged harassment of legislators and those who criticize the executive arm of government.
The National Assembly will not hesitate to evoke its constitutional powers if nothing is done to address the above resolutions passed today.
The frosty relationship between the National Assembly and the executive reached a crescendo during President Muhammadu Buhari's presentation of the 2019 Appropriation Bill. It sets the stage for what is a first in the history of the Nigerian Parliament, the heckling and booing of the president, which led to an abrupt end of the ceremony.
What happened in the National Assembly the other day was not strange. You know, it has happened in other parts of the world, and it will continue to happen. We can look at it from different angles. Okay, first is the question of crowd psychology. The crowd has this kind of psychology, you know, and it revolves around anonymity, around heterogeneity, and problematic process of identification. So the crowd can be fickle, the crowd can be feeble. You know, don't forget that the legislature is a variant of the crowd. They are in a multitude. Forget the fact that they are distinguished. Forget the fact that they are respectable. Okay. Forget the fact that they are learned elites. Okay. Qualified citizens. The fact that they are in a group, in a multitude, they are susceptible to the traits of the crowd. So that manifested that day, and you can hardly question them for it. There's an extent to which you can go blaming them for it. The second aspect of it is that there's no great speaker in history, in political history, that has not been heckled. From Martin Luther King. History has it that when Martin Luther King was once heckled, it was after he was heckled that he delivered one of the best speeches ever, I Have a Dream. Okay? Harry Truman was severally heckled, Ronald Reagan, recent history, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and even Trump. And of course, even a few weeks ago, Theresa May. So it's something that can happen. But what happens thereafter? You know, what happens thereafter? Is it going to be crisis? Is it going to be destruction? I don't expect that to be our situation, our own situation. And if you look at the Nigerian situation as well, you know, several meanings can be read into it. One is that, you know, the president didn't go to the National Assembly for the first time a few days ago. He was there to deliver a budget speech. That will be about the third or fourth time that he'll go. But that's the first time that thing will happen. So why is it happening? It could be that there has been an increased fracturing of our political process, and it's been reflected in the activities of politicians. Okay? But it shows that they are partisan politicians, which they are in any case, like I said somewhere else. So, but it's not something that we should belabor too much. It has happened, it is what it is. We should step forward, believe that it's a new introduction, it's a new dimension to our political process. Learn from it, and let our leaders, it's probably a call to action. Our leaders should see it as a call to action, and do know that the populace reflected in the constitution of the National Assembly are not necessarily yes men.
2018 will go down in history as a year where the 8th Assembly passed a record number of legislations, but the acrimonious relationship between the executive and the National Assembly cast a long shadow over governance in the country.